My wife didn't just walk out on me, she emptied the college fund our twin daughters had been saving their whole future for, disappeared with the man she'd been hiding, and left nothing but a hollow house and a broken version of me standing in the kitchen staring at a bank balance that read 0. I thought I'd lost everything. I thought she'd stolen every piece of our lives that mattered. But the real shock didn't come from the betrayal. It came when my daughters looked at me, calm, steady, almost cold, and smirked like they knew a truth I didn't saying. "Dad, don't worry. We handled it." I didn't understand what they meant. Not until days later, when my wife called in a panic, screaming my name, her voice cracking as she realized something she never saw coming. And that's when everything changed. My name is Cale, and I'm still trying to understand how a man can lose his wife in the most brutal way, yet somehow find out his daughters were 3 steps ahead of everyone, including me. Before I share my story, I want to know you're here with me. Just say "listening" in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far my story reaches. Sometimes even the smallest connection makes a story feel heard. And if you can please subscribe to the channel, it helps more than you think, especially for someone trying to rebuild from the ground up. Thank you. And now, here's my story. I woke up that morning in the quiet Denver house that had held my family for more than a decade, and for a moment everything felt painfully ordinary. The kind of ordinary that makes you believe life is steady, even when it's already cracking beneath your feet. I went through the motions the way I always did, coffee brewing, blinds half open to let in the cold Colorado light, my mind drifting through the routines Alara and I had built, when our marriage still felt like something I understood. Somewhere along the years, the warmth between us had cooled into something polite but distant, a gap I never learned how to close. But I told myself marriages went through seasons. I told myself we were fine. I opened my laptop at the kitchen counter like I did every Tuesday, ready to check the college fund for our daughters Lazara and Nixie, 17, and brilliant, the best thing I'd ever done. I always checked the account myself. After growing up without a safety net, I'd sworn my kids would never have to fight their way into their future the way I did. The login screen loaded, I typed the password without thinking, and then the numbers shifted. 1 second, I saw the familiar balance, more than $180,000, and the next second it vanished. 0. A clean, merciless 0. For a moment, I thought it was a glitch. My pulse spiked so hard my vision trembled. I refreshed the page, logged out, logged back in, switched browsers, even restarted the laptop like some part of me believed that could undo reality. But every time the number came back the same. 0. My hands felt numb as I checked the transaction history. And that's when the truth hit me like a punch. The withdrawals weren't random. They were precise, deliberate, and authorized by the joint account holder, Alara, my wife. My breath locked in my chest as I grabbed my phone and called her, straight to voicemail. I called again and again, each unanswered ring landing like a blow. Something was wrong. Either something terrible had happened to her, or something I didn't want to imagine was happening because of her. Footsteps came down the stairs. Lazara first, then Nixie, already dressed for school, already scanning my face the way teenagers do when they know something's off. I tried to pull myself together, but whatever mask I managed to form must not have been very convincing because they both stopped. I told them. I didn't sugarcoat it, didn't try to cushion the fall. "The college fund," I said. "It's gone." They exchanged a look, quick, subtle, but impossible to miss. Not shock, not fear. Something calmer. Something almost knowing. And then instead of panicking, they simply nodded. Lazara's face softened, almost sympathetic, while Nixie looked at me with a steadiness I didn't understand. It was the wrong reaction. The completely wrong reaction to losing their entire future. But they didn't explain it, and I was too shaken to press them. When they walked away to get their backpacks, I stood frozen in the kitchen, fighting the sinking feeling that this wasn't just a financial disaster. Something was moving beneath the surface, something my daughters knew, something I didn't, and the uncertainty settled like a stone in my chest, hinting at a truth I wasn't ready to face. Later that afternoon, while I was still cycling through fear, confusion, and denial, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. The message was short, clinical, and devastating. Alara had gone missing during a mountain meditation retreat in Santa Fe. Her belongings were found on a trail near a steep drop, but there was no sign of her. No witness, No body. Just an abandoned scene that suggested something terrible had happened. My knees went weak. Every suspicion I had earlier was drowned instantly by guilt and fear. Maybe she wasn't avoiding my calls. Maybe she needed me and I didn't know. The sheriff's office confirmed the report, but had nothing more to offer, no evidence, no timeline, nothing. They spoke in phrases like possible accident and unfavorable terrain, words that only made the situation feel more unreal. The funeral happened fast, too fast. A closed casket because there was no body to fill it, just items recovered from the supposed accident site, her scarf, her bracelet, her water bottle. I stood there staring at the symbolic coffin hollowed out by the idea that the last conversation I'd tried to have with her had been a voicemail she never returned. The grief felt sharp, but underneath it was another feeling I tried hard to ignore: confusion. Something about all of it was wrong. And my daughters, they barely cried. They stood by my side like quiet shadows, their expressions thoughtful rather than grieving. I told myself they were being strong. I convinced myself that everyone processes loss differently. But even in my fog, I noticed the way they kept glancing at each other, communicating silently in a way that made me feel like the outsider in my own family. In the days that followed, little things began to bother me. Alara's jewelry box empty. Completely emptied, even pieces she hadn't worn in years. Her car in the driveway, parked slightly crooked seat adjusted too far back for her height, as if someone taller had been driving it. The keys found inside looked staged, neatly placed rather than dropped. The more I replayed the details, the less it resembled an accident. One night, walking past the twins' bedroom, I heard Lazara whisper, "Just let Dad rest a bit more. It's not time." The words stopped me cold. Not time for what? What did they know that I didn't? I ended the night standing in front of Alara's bedroom door, her clothes still hanging in the closet, her perfume faintly lingering in the air, wondering for the first time if my wife, the woman I had tried so hard to believe in, might not be missing at all. Maybe she wasn't lost. Maybe she had chosen to disappear. And if she had, then what else had she chosen to take with her? In the days after the funeral, the house felt heavier than grief alone could explain. I moved through each room like someone half awake, caught between mourning and a gnawing sense that something about Alara's disappearance wasn't what it seemed. I kept replaying the details: her belongings left too neatly on that trail, the way the twins didn't cry, the jewelry box emptied. Eventually, I couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. I sat down at her desk, opened her laptop, and forced myself to look for anything that could tell me what happened on that mountain. Almost everything in her email was wiped clean. Entire threads erased, inbox organized down to the bone. But in the drafts folder, buried under system backups, I found a single unsent message that hadn't been fully deleted. The opening line stopped me cold. "The plan is ready for when I finally leave." It wasn't long and parts were corrupted, but it was enough to freeze my breath. Leave what leave? Who? I checked the login records next, and the timeline didn't match the official story. The most recent IP address wasn't anywhere near the remote retreat site. It was linked to a boutique hotel in downtown Santa Fe, far from the mountain trail where they claimed she vanished. That one discrepancy pulled me deeper. Her browser history showed searches for offshore accounts, one-way flights to different cities, and multiple prepaid SIM cards. Every click painted a version of her life I had never been allowed to see. While I was scrolling through the fragments of her digital trail, I heard footsteps behind me. Lazara leaned against the doorframe, her arms crossed, watching me quietly. A moment later, Nixie appeared beside her. They didn't seem surprised to find me digging into their mother's computer. Instead of panic or concern, they shared a look, one that carried a strange mix of caution and resignation, and told me I should rest, that I'd been through enough. Their calm only sharpened my unease. It was the same calm they'd shown when I told them the money was gone. Too steady, too knowing. I asked them directly if they knew something I didn't. They didn't deny it, but they didn't answer either. They just exchanged another silent glance, and for a second I felt like a stranger in my own home. As they turned to leave, I heard Nixie mutter under her breath, "Her plan started months ago anyway." My heart pounded as I called after her, demanding to know what that meant, but she only froze for a moment before walking away without looking back. I was left sitting in the dim glow of the laptop, staring at the traces of a life unraveling in front of me. Trying to regain some sense of control, I went searching for her phone records. Her number had been inactive since the day she disappeared, or so I thought. But when I checked the device list linked to our family plan, I saw her phone still pinging cell towers in Santa Fe. The signal was faint and inconsistent, jumping between locations as if someone or something was moving with it. I didn't know what to make of any of it. Nothing aligned. Nothing brought clarity. And then, just as I shut the laptop and tried to breathe, my phone rang. A blocked number. I answered, my voice cracking as I said hello. No one spoke. There was only the sound of an engine humming, wind rushing against a moving car, and a frantic breath, heavy strained, as if someone was running or hiding or terrified of being heard. Before I could ask who it was, the call cut off, leaving only the empty tone in my ear and a dread I couldn't swallow. The room felt suddenly colder, and for the first time I wondered if Alara was running from something far more dangerous than us, or if she was the danger we hadn't yet fully understood. The unanswered call haunted me through the night. By morning, I knew I couldn't keep stumbling in the dark. Whatever was happening was bigger than a missing person report and a drained bank account. I needed help, someone who could investigate what I couldn't. I reached out to Jasper, my closest friend since college, and told him everything. Within an hour, he connected me with a private investigator. He trusted a man named Marcus Kellen. Marcus was blunt, efficient, and absolutely uninterested in comforting me. He listened, took notes, and then spent the next 2 days digging into Alara's movements in the 72 hours before she supposedly vanished. When he finally called me back, I could hear the weight in his voice before he said a word. Alara had never gone near the mountain retreat. According to hotel logs, security footage, and credit card records, she checked into a luxury hotel in Santa Fe under her own name. The room, however, had been reserved using the card of a man named Noel Ashcroft. She spent the entire weekend there, not at a meditation center. Hearing that felt like a second funeral, this time for the version of her I'd been trying to defend. Marcus told me Noel was tied to a network involved in moving money through offshore channels, which connected directly to the websites I'd found in her search history. Every new detail tightened the knot in my chest. I went back through her phone logs with fresh eyes. There it was, a number I'd never seen, one she'd called almost every night for 2 months. I didn't recognize it, but the pattern told its own story. She'd been communicating with Noel long before she disappeared, long before the money vanished, long before she left us standing in the ruins of our own home. The twins were in the living room when I confronted them. This time they didn't deflect. Lazara sat down across from me and said she'd overheard Alara on the phone 3 months earlier whispering that she was close to getting out of this house. She hadn't understood then, she said. But now everything made sense. I felt the floor tilt under me. I'd been mourning a woman who had already left me long before she disappeared. Still, some pieces felt out of place. I reviewed the home security system and my stomach dropped when I saw the logs. The cameras had been disabled the night before Alara left. Not by me, not by the twins, not by the system didn't show who had done it, only that someone had. Trying to clear my head, I checked her car one more time. In the trunk, tucked under a blanket, I found a small leather notebook. Inside, pages were filled with coded notes. Numbers, names, destinations, none of it immediately clear. But one line, written cleanly in the center of a page, stood out: meet again where the sun never sets. I didn't know what it meant, but everything inside me whispered that it wasn't poetic. It was practical, instructional, a destination. I drove home feeling like the world had split open beneath me. Alara hadn't been lost to some tragic accident. She had built an escape plan, step by step, layer by layer, involving people I'd never known existed. And no matter how much I tried to pretend otherwise, the truth had become impossible to deny. She hadn't vanished. She had engineered her disappearance. Standing in the doorway that night, staring at the darkened hallway leading to the room she once slept in, the weight of it finally settled on me. I hadn't lost her to fate or misfortune. I had lost her to a plan she had designed with precision long before I ever knew I needed to look for her. I spent hours hunched over the small leather notebook I'd found in the trunk of Alara's car, trying to make sense of the coded phrases scattered across its pages. Every number, every symbol, every cryptic line felt like it held the key to understanding who my wife truly had been in those final months. I traced my finger over the sentence about the sun never setting, wondering if it was a metaphor or a roadmap. The deeper I sank into it, the more I felt myself unraveling. Just as I started mapping out the entries on a notepad, Nixie quietly stepped into the room. She didn't look surprised to find me obsessing over the notebook. Instead, she leaned against the doorway and said in a way that felt both gentle and unsettling that I didn't need to do this because everything would become clear soon. Something about her tone made me sit back and really look at her. My daughters had carried themselves with a strange composure ever since the money disappeared. Now I realized it wasn't shock or numbness holding them together. It was information. I called both of them into the room and told them I was done being kept in the dark. Whatever they knew, whatever they'd been holding back, I needed them to say it now. Lazara was the first to speak, her voice steady, even as her hands twisted in her lap. She told me that 3 months earlier, while printing an essay on Alara's computer, she accidentally opened an email from my wife to someone named Noel. The message talked about a new startup fund and a solution to move forward without Kyle blocking the future. Hearing my own name reduced to an obstacle was like being slapped, but I forced myself to listen. Then Nixie stepped in. She'd found an entirely separate email account tied to a crypto wallet and repeated transfers connected to Bermuda. That alone would have been enough to shake me, but the girls kept going. They confessed that they had been monitoring Alara's activity for months, ever since they realized she wasn't just planning to leave us, she was planning to take the money and disappear with Noel, using the college fund as her escape route. Their voices didn't crack. Mine did. They explained how they dug deeper, uncovering more of her online movements, tracing communication patterns, and even connecting her to a man named Declan Vale, a businessman who had lost more than $300,000 in a venture she orchestrated. My daughters hadn't wanted to tell me. They were afraid I'd fall apart, afraid I'd still try to protect her the way I always had. But when the college fund vanished, they realized they needed to act. Hearing them talk so matter-of-factly about the investigation they'd conducted behind my back was both humbling and terrifying. Nixie admitted she created a false investor identity online to reach Noel, posing as someone interested in his offshore opportunities. She said it calmly, like it was a school project. And then she admitted something that turned my stomach cold. She had accessed one of Alara's offshore accounts, not just viewed it, broken into it. I stared at her, unable to speak for a long moment. What she'd done wasn't a harmless intrusion or a reckless prank. It was a breach that carried real risks, especially with money that crossed international borders. But she said she'd taken precautions, that she knew what she was doing, that she had been careful. I couldn't decide whether to be proud or terrified. Maybe both. By the time they finished talking, the room felt too small to contain everything they'd just revealed. My daughters, my teenage daughters, had pulled back a curtain I didn't even know existed, exposing a side of my wife's world I had never been allowed to see. I felt shaken to my core, not only because of what Alara had done, but because the people I thought I was protecting had been protecting me all along. I realized then that nothing about my life was what I believed it to be, and the truth we were closing in on was bigger and darker than I had imagined. The chapter of my marriage I thought ended with grief was beginning again with something far more complicated. I wasn't widowed. I wasn't abandoned. I was entangled in a hidden war my daughters had entered long before I even knew there was a battle to be fought. After everything the girls told me, I went back to the notebook with new eyes. The codes began to feel less abstract, more like coordinates guiding us toward a place where Alara felt untouchable. I spent 2 long days piecing together the locations referenced, comparing them to places she'd once mentioned in passing, and eventually concluded that the line about the sun never setting referred to Sedona, Arizona. She had always been enchanted by the landscape there, the warm light on the red rocks, the horizon that seemed to glow even after dusk. If she had a sanctuary, that would be it. I drove to Sedona alone, my mind swirling with equal parts dread and determination. The town was a strange mix of tourists, healers, and people escaping something they refused to name. At a resort she had mentioned to me years earlier, I showed the manager a recent photo of her. His eyebrows lifted with recognition almost instantly. He remembered her checking in with a tall man whose description matched Noel. Hearing that felt like a confirmation and a betrayal layered together. But the manager wasn't done. A few days after the couple left, Alara returned alone. She asked specifically for a private appointment with a guest who stayed there often. When he showed me the picture they kept on file, my heart sank. It was Declan Vale, the man my daughters said had been involved with her in some kind of fraudulent investment. Knowing she had met him there made it clear that she wasn't simply running away with Noel. She was playing multiple sides, pursuing multiple escapes, and leveraging anyone who could further her plans. On the drive back to Denver, the desert stretching endlessly behind me, Marcus called with new information. Noel had vanished sometime the previous night. His car was abandoned near the outskirts of Albuquerque, and police were now linking him to a separate investigation. It felt like every thread we tugged unraveled into another. That same evening, an email arrived in my inbox from an anonymous sender. The subject line stopped my breath. "Stop searching if you don't want to lose more." Attached was a single image, my daughters standing in front of our house, taken from a distance. It didn't look old. It looked like it had been captured within hours. My heart crashed into panic. I locked the house down, checked every door and window, and drove the girls straight to Jasper's place, refusing to let them out of my sight. While I stood in his living room trying to steady my breathing, Nixie quietly opened her laptop and began scanning the email metadata. Within minutes, she found that it had been sent from the same region where Alara had accessed her crypto accounts. Not just the same city, the same 3-mile radius. It meant someone connected to her was watching us, or worse, someone she relied on was now turning their attention toward us. The girls told me again to trust them, that everything was reaching a point where the truth would break open no matter what I did. I didn't know whether to cling to their confidence or be terrified by it. That night, as I lay awake listening to the unfamiliar hum of Jasper's guest room, the weight of everything pressed down on me. My wife had built a web of lies so intricate that every step forward revealed another corner of it. Noel was gone. Declan was somehow involved, and someone was watching my daughters closely enough to photograph them. I no longer felt like a man trying to piece together a broken marriage. I felt like someone pulled into the center of a dangerous plan I was never meant to discover. And as much as the girls reassured me, there was no comfort in knowing that the storm gathering around us was still far from its peak. The moment I saw that anonymous email with the photo of my daughters standing in front of our house, something inside me snapped into place. Running wasn't going to save us. Hiding wasn't going to end this. Whoever was watching us was close enough to get that picture, and I refused to let fear dictate another second of my life. I reset every camera, patched every security breach, and locked down the perimeter. The house felt like a fortress, and yet my mind stayed wide open with dread. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated for half a heartbeat before answering. The voice on the other end wasn't a stranger, it was Alara. Her breath was jagged, frantic, her words tumbling over each other as she shouted that someone had drained her offshore accounts. She kept saying everything was gone, all of it, and she needed to know who did it. I kept my tone level, masking the storm inside me, and asked where she was. She didn't answer directly, only spat out that Noel had vanished with whatever money she had left. The certainty in her voice told me her perfect escape plan had collapsed faster than she could contain it. I asked her why she had threatened our daughters, why she sent that email. She screamed that it wasn't her, that the photo wasn't from her, that someone dangerous was after her too. I told her to come back and explain everything face to face, but she just kept repeating that she would be killed if she returned. Before I could press further, she hung up. The girls had been listening from the living room, and the moment the call ended, Nixie replayed the background sounds from my speaker. Within minutes, she identified them: airport announcements, rolling suitcases, the distinctive rumble of a baggage tractor. She pulled up her laptop, analyzed the audio frequencies, and said Alara was at Phoenix Sky Harbor, already preparing to leave the country. There wasn't time to argue. We packed what we needed and drove through the night. The air in the car felt thick with everything: unspoken fear, resolve, exhaustion, and the quiet knowledge that this drive could change everything we thought we knew. By sunrise, we reached Phoenix. The airport was chaotic, filled with travelers moving in all directions. I shouted her name over the noise, and when she turned, the look on her face was a mix of fear and contempt, like she had expected the past, not the consequences, to catch up to her. She tried to straighten her posture to reclaim control, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her. I asked her to hand over the financial data to tell the truth. She refused, saying Noel manipulated her, forced her, framed her. She reached for self-pity like it was her last shield. Before I could respond, Lazara stepped forward. She pulled out her phone and played audio recordings of Lara talking to Noel about how to fake her disappearance, how to withdraw the money without alerting me, how to ensure the twins would handle the aftermath alone. Each recording echoed through the terminal like a verdict. People began to stare. Alara snapped, screaming that her daughters were ungrateful, that everything she did was for a better life, for a chance at freedom. But the truth was already laid bare. I told her calmly and clearly that she had destroyed her own family long before we ever discovered her plan. She tried to run. Airport security reacted, immediately stopping her before she could slip through the international gate. When they requested identification, she produced a passport under another name. The officers exchanged looks that told the rest. They detained her on the spot. As they led her away, she stared at us with a desperation I had never seen before. Her voice cracked as she called my name, but there was nothing left for me to answer. For the first time, she knew she had truly lost everything she tried to steal. Ilara was taken to an airport security room, held under suspicion while federal agents were contacted. Her fake passport, her attempt to flee, and the records tied to her name were enough to trigger an immediate escalation. Minutes later, I was asked to come in and provide a full account of everything I knew. For the first time, I told the entire story without hesitation: how the college fund disappeared, how her emails revealed another life, how she staged her own disappearance, how she tangled herself in offshore accounts, and how Noel fit into the picture. Every detail felt like peeling back a layer of the life I once thought was real. The girls sat beside me, handing over their meticulously compiled files. Transaction histories, audio recordings, metadata, flight patterns, crypto movements. Even the agents were stunned at the level of organization. The evidence stacked quickly, painting a picture too clear to dispute. Ilara's lawyer arrived shortly after, insisting she had been manipulated, that she was simply a victim of Noel's schemes. But the documents and recordings didn't bend to her narrative. The notebook I found in her car proved she had been planning her departure long before Noel entered the picture. Every move she made had been intentional, calculated, and rooted in deception. Soon, the federal agents received confirmation from Canadian authorities Noel had been arrested at the border with a large sum of undeclared cash. His statements matched everything the girls had uncovered. Ilara orchestrated the financial structure, used multiple identities, and intended to disappear permanently once the money cleared. Then the final blow came. Declan Vale walked into the station carrying a folder thick with evidence showing that Ilara had siphoned more than $300,000 from him through a fraudulent investment scheme. His calm presence contrasted sharply with the chaos Ilara was drowning in, and his testimony completed the picture the authorities needed. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Ilara broke down, insisting we manipulated her, that we had twisted everything to trap her. I told her the one truth she couldn't outrun: if we hadn't uncovered what she did, our daughters would have lost their future, and I would have lost every piece of my life without knowing why. She was formally charged with financial fraud, identity manipulation, attempted property theft, and the concealment of illegal assets. The case moved quickly. Too much evidence, too many victims, too many lies. Months later, the court granted me full custody of the girls. The college fund was restored using money recovered from Noel and frozen portions of Ilara's accounts. It wasn't everything she took, but it was enough to rebuild. The twins came out stronger. Nixie was accepted into MIT for her cybersecurity talents, and Lazara earned her place at NYU to study behavioral psychology, determined to understand people like her mother, not to excuse them, but to prevent their damage. One quiet evening after they left for school orientations, I sat alone in the Denver house that had once felt like a battlefield. I wrote a simple note to myself: I lost a wife, but I found the truth. I found the strength I didn't know I had. And I found 2 daughters who refused to let darkness swallow this family. In the end, I learned something I should have known all along. Family isn't the one who shares your name. Family is the one who stands beside you when the shadows grow long. And with that, the door finally closed on everything Alara tried to destroy. When everything finally settled after the court hearings, after the interviews with investigators, after the house grew quiet again, I realized how strange it felt to breathe normally. For months, I had lived in survival mode, always looking over my shoulder, always waiting for the next shock to hit. But now, the silence wasn't threatening. It wasn't hollow. It was peaceful. It was mine. I stood in the living room one night long after the girls had gone to sleep and looked around the space that had seen the worst and the best of us. It used to feel like Alara's house, like I was just someone living beside her ambitions, her secrets, her separate worlds. Now for the first time it felt like my home, maybe because the truth had burned away everything false, leaving only what was real and worth rebuilding. I kept thinking about the moment they led her away in handcuffs. There was a time when I would have chased after her, asked what I had done wrong, begged her to stay, begged her to love me the way I loved her. But watching her go that day, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel triumph. I felt clarity. I finally understood that losing someone who was destroying us wasn't a tragedy. It was a release. And then there were my daughters, my fierce, brilliant daughters who had stood against a world of lies without ever flinching. I didn't raise them to be detectives or strategists or warriors, but that's who they became because the situation demanded it. They didn't just save the family financially, they saved me emotionally. They reminded me that love doesn't betray you. People do. And the people who truly love you will fight like hell to keep you standing. Sometimes late at night I think about how close we came to losing everything. How carefully Alara had planned each move. How confidently she believed she'd get away with it. And yet in the end, what tore her plan apart wasn't the law or chance, it was the daughters she underestimated and the father she thought she had outgrown. Rebuilding hasn't been easy. There are days when the memories hit like sharp echoes, when I question how I didn't see any of it sooner, when I replay conversations and wonder how long she had been gone emotionally before she vanished physically. But then I look at the future my girls are building. Nixie preparing for MIT Lazara, burying herself in behavioral psychology, and I realize healing isn't about forgetting. It's about moving forward while carrying the truth with open eyes. This chapter of my life didn't end the way I thought it would. It didn't end with the family I imagined, but it ended with the family I needed, stronger, clearer, honest, unbreakable in ways we never were before. And if you're still here reading this, thank you. Truly. It means something to feel heard after walking through a storm like this. Before you go, I'd love to know you're here with me. Say still here in the comments or tell me where you're listening from. Knowing someone out there is hearing this story makes the weight of it feel a little lighter. And if you can please subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you realize, especially for someone who's had to rebuild life from the ground up. Your support keeps these stories alive, keeps this community growing, and reminds people like me that even the hardest endings can become the start of something better. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And whatever you're going through, whatever shadows you're facing, I hope you find the truth, the strength, and the people who will stand beside you when it matters most.